Hello everyone, welcome to Techy Tuesday, the updates for the admin panel. As always, we're delighted to see you all here. I was really keen to announce yesterday an update to the presentation tools inside Google Meet. As if you remember last month, I can now stay inside the Meet. I can see all your lovely faces and I can manage my slides inside the Google Meet. And they've announced there's going to be another button up here that says that you can share the slide deck direct from inside the Meet on the little lozenge of buttons that you get, and it's still not there yet, which is a real shame, but there we go. Can't be helped, can't have everything. Hi Dave, welcome. So just what I've said there, just to remind you, Q&A is turned on. So if we use that tool, if you suddenly think of a question, oh, here's a group of experienced administrators of the Google Workspace admin panel, this is the forum for me to pick someone's brain. Do please ask the question in the Q&A and then vote each other's up, so we'll deal with them in order of democratic voting process if indeed there are any questions at the end. I mention it now because there are relatively few updates this month, so we'll get through these pretty quick, I think. So that's so let's get through it then. Okay, so those of you who use Google Meet for your video conferencing solution, there's a transition period we're in at the moment where the functionality is that if no one accepts the calendar invite apart from the owner, then it releases the room. So you do an invite, you invite lots of people through your Google Meet stuff, add all the people into it, add the room into it, of course. If everyone declines it, then it says, oh, well, actually, no one's going anyway. So they remove the room and make it from your calendar item and make it available for someone else to book anyway. So if you use that, be aware that currently it's in a transition period. It will eventually decide what the setting is going to be by March the 6th, but currently it's on by default. So if it's something that you use, and just to be aware that people will suddenly, if they don't get anyone joining their meeting, they might find they're losing the room. So just to be aware that that might be the case with that one. This is, I think, for those of you who are using APIs to kind of add extra functionality to whatever the tasks are that you do, they're going to putting all of it into one place. So all your Google APIs are in the cloud console along with all the others. So all the things that you do can be in there. And of course, in the side panel, I don't really understand what it does. I understand in principle, but don't understand the practicalities. You can pin the Google Workspace API so they'll appear in the menu list on the left, so you can get to it a little bit quicker. And I've stuck the video in there that explains all those new things that you'll be able to do. And it just means you can do it all from a single location without having to keep endlessly kind of flipping from screen to screen and things. So it's making that management of it all a little bit more and a little slicker. So that's that one. Oh, I don't want to go to that yet. We're going to go on to the next slide. Come on, next slide. There we go. Okay, so we've talked a little bit before about the whole thing about encrypting emails, encrypting docs and things, and that is client-side encryption is now going out wider, and you can now do a search for it inside Google Vault. Because of course it's encrypted, I think they're making an assumption that the reason it's encrypted is because there's very personal or sensitive information in it. So whilst you can do a search for those encrypted emails inside your Vault, you as the administrator can only see the subject line, the sender and the receiver. So you get some information, but you won't see anything that's inside the email or attachments and so on and so forth. So just to be aware that you've got some kind of search facility if you need to use that particular tool. And that's for Education Standard and Education Plus only. So those two paid for versions of Google Workspace. Next one, I mentioned this yesterday to the end user group because of course they'll be using this when it comes in. This is a beta to be able to move folders. So, and you can see that when you get to move folders, it tells you what you're moving it into, and it also tells you how many items will be moved. So presume that's the folders and subfolders and documents inside the folder that you're trying to move, so that you're aware what you're going to do. And of course, all the sharing permissions will be the same for that folder as they are for all the others. So whatever level you've given to someone, that will be the same level as they get for that. And the link, you'll see the link there, apply for beta here. If that's something that, if you're using shared drives extensively in your organization, that might be one that's worth considering, because before now it was a bit of a faff, wasn't it, to move lots of files. And it'll get much easier once that's fully ingrained. So that's a good thing, I think. So you can now flip between the two kind of versions of hardware from Google Meet to join Google Zoom rooms and things. Why you would if you've got Meet, because I think Meet is a perfectly good tool now. I think in the early days of lockdown, I think Zoom was certainly the better tool, wasn't it? It had lots more functionality, but Google stepped up to the plate and gave us a great deal more functionality inside Google Meet. So I don't know there's particularly a need for it, but you might have some legacy accounts and kit that you're using that means that you can theoretically flip between the two and join meetings from either by either and things, so on and so forth. I think that's more to do with the hardware version of it. It's the Google Meet hardware rather than just through a Google Meet, of course. I should have said that at the beginning. So that's that one. That's nice and neat. This is a setting in the directory where you can now add the option for people to manage their own pronouns. I checked ours yesterday and it wasn't there yesterday. I haven't checked today. And the image is basically if you haven't got it at the minute, the first three, the name, the photo and the gender are already there. Once this is updated, you'll find pronouns appear, and then the person will be able to go into the about me.google.com, and which is where all your personal information is and how your profile is presented to other people, and they can elect to decide what pronouns they will use. So if that's something that you're keen to allow people that freedom to do, then make sure that when it does arrive in your directory settings, you can actually you've got to tick it to allow them to do that in the same way they have with the other ones. So think carefully about if you happen to have, I'm not sure what organizations we've got here. If you've got organizations that aren't in the UK or that you have staff who travel a lot, do be aware of the legality of if you appear to be a male and you declare yourself to be female, for example, there are some countries where that will be deemed as illegal. So just to be aware, if you've got staff that move around a lot and you give them that option, you've got to handle it very carefully based on where they're traveling to and from. If they're only stuck in the UK, then it's not illegal, but there are other countries where it is. So just do be mindful of that if you've got staff that travel internationally. Okay, and those are all the updates for this month. That's like 12 minutes. That's got to be a record, hasn't it? There was was it 6 or 7? I can't remember. So I was having a little ponder. I've asked, not giving James or Cisco any time, and Cisco isn't with us anymore, but James is. My Cisco might be in the folders. But I was thinking about so where do you get your help from? And I was having a route round and thinking, where do we get our help from when we are stuck? Not that we ever get stuck, of course. We're geniuses here. But I didn't know if people knew there is a Google admin YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to, and the link is there for you to have a look at. I was trying to find out if it is an official Google Workspace admin YouTube channel, and I couldn't actually find and be absolutely confident that it was. It's got 108,000 followers, so it's clearly popular, and there's a pretty extensive list of videos in there should you need to go and look anything up in particular. So do please go and check that out. And then the other one that I'm sure you all know, but I thought I would draw your attention to it in case you aren't aware of it. You might have gone to the support pages, support.google.com, but there is actually a Google Workspace admin help section, which is a section in its own, which you can also go to. And again, the title is a link to that spot should you need it. So you'll have that at the end when Chris sends out these videos. And that is it. The next update is James. Yes, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted has everyone been made aware of the exploit that was discovered at the end of last month?
Do you want to explain? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, Shimmer one.
Yeah, the Shimmer one. Yeah, if you're not aware of it, you should be made aware of it. I'll put the link in the chat. Google are actively working on it as we speak, and they've actually responded there within that article about what they're doing in order to mitigate it. It's quite a serious one.
Do you want to explain what it is, James, so that in case people have missed that?
Yeah, it's an exploit that can basically unenroll a managed Chromebook, so that any user can unenroll a managed Chromebook from a domain.
Oh, right. Okay. So then they can just take it away and just use it as a personal device.
Yeah, without having admin access.
Right. So it makes them nickable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
basically. Whereas a savvy criminal before would have worked out that there's no point in nicking them because they're a brick. Whereas now that's not the case until it's fixed. Okay, right.
It also means that they can log in using a personal Gmail account, which therefore removes some of the restrictions that we would push out from the Google admin panel.
Yeah.
We're finding that is probably more the concern than the theft.
All right, so kids are using the same trick to.
Yeah, so it's the kids. It's kids that are doing it. It's not the criminals. It's kids that are unenrolling them, so that they can then log in using a personal Gmail account, which means that they can then get onto sites and extensions and so on and so forth that they wouldn't be able to do because of the restrictions that we set in the admin panel.
Of course. Wow. So let's hope they get that sorted quickly. That's quite serious, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a first. I mean, all the time, I often say to people that, you know, they're kind of not worth nicking them because you just turn them into a brick and put a message on there saying, this is the property of our school. Please phone this number and we'll arrange collection. And that's it. You never need to do anything else. And clearly that's not any more the case, which is, that's massive, isn't it, really? Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that, James. That's really helpful. I did notice there was some.
Having read through that, they become deprovisioned. So if you monitor your deprovisioned devices, you can see if any inadvertently pop into there. Well, we've got ours set up so we know who they're allocated to. So if they do, you can still grab hold of the collar because they're in school and on roll.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is serious in terms of vulnerability, but I guess managing it with staff and students if they are playing around with it, it just doesn't disappear.
Yeah. Has anyone had an experience of it actually happening to them yet?
No.
It's only recently come to light, so
I think it's been around for about a month, isn't it? And it came. There was more information came out a couple of weeks ago. We've not actually seen it at any of ours, or at least we've not noticed it.
But like Andy says, you can check in your deprovision list. So anything
we monitor that regularly. Yeah.
Thanks for that question about the pronouns. No, it was late in the month that the announcement came. It's normal rollout, sort of 15 days ish. So it should be here in the next few days or so, in the next week or so, I suppose, because we're only early in February, aren't we? But yeah, sure, it should be here soon. It wasn't an hour admin panel yesterday when I checked. So there was something came in on the Q&A, didn't it? Let's see what that question is. Okay, so there's a question from Andy about any APIs and functionality in the APIs that people currently use. Anyone want to pop up and share that? You can either raise your hand or just unmute. There's a small enough group.
The only ones we really use is Salamander. So Salamander use the API for provisioning of accounts. We tend not to do that in-house. We're more than capable of breaking things without doing it programmatically.
We use the APIs to create accounts, classrooms, populate classrooms, update dates, basically lots of them.
So you think you're going to notice a difference, John, when it's now all the APIs are all in one place and you can keep your eye on them and things?
I suspect I unfortunately missed that bit of the update because I came in late. So
did you? Well, let me flip back to it. It's basically just putting them all in one place on the cloud console. I think it's just an improvement in the interface that you're getting. It's not any significant functionality increase.
If they do anything to improve the interface, I'll be a happy man because it's a bit of a nightmare navigating it.
Oh, is it? Okay. So yeah, so they just put it's all going to be in a single location in your cloud.console.google.com, something I can't remember exactly now.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. I can remember that.
Yeah, but I think the video goes through that. That's why I put the video in that slide deck. So when Chris shares the slide deck out, you'll have that video to look at. Okay. So it's a mixed bag, Andy. And so yeah, some people leave it to other companies to do it for them that have got more experience in that. But John is using it quite extensively.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that one done. That's good, excellent. So do schools generally use really managed structured shared drives or have wide open?
Yeah. You can either set it where you sort of structure it or whether you just let anybody create a shared drive.
Yeah. Anyone want to jump in on that one?
We have everything set up through our IT help desk, because if you open that up to staff, you will end up with a world of pain and everybody creating their own drive called drive or test
or 0, 1.
banana. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the 0, 1 to get it to the top of the list. Yeah, I'd definitely. You can open it up on an OU basis, and I think on a group basis. So if you do need to give individual people who you can trust access to create them, you can do.
Yeah.
But we just have a policy of doing everything through IT help desk, and then that goes through some rules that I've laid out to my team.
Yeah, that's the way I do it on a much smaller scale. But we did start where when it first came on, and I think during lockdown, where it sort of seemed sensible to let people trial, and then we had a review, because we suddenly got a plethora of weird and wonderful names and different groups and things. And like you say, Dave, a lot of them were tests that we very soon overrode that into a structured way. And we're trying to get more people to use shared drives and to create documents in shared drives rather than creating their own and sharing them. And I have done some research and reading where some organisations really limit your own Google Drive, and some have nearly got it locked out. So you have to create something in a shared drive, which is an interesting proposition, really.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's like the old staff shared drives you used to get on servers in schools. And if you didn't set some sensible limits, then you just end endless numbers of folders in folders in folders in folders, and you could never find anything, because you'd no idea where anyone put anything, and there's always that risk, isn't there? Yeah. So yeah, a clear structure and a need for a new shared drive request through a central organizing group, and then you can also manage it that bit better. And like you said, now the limits are on there. You can set the limits on how much space there is in there, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Stuart. Stuart Marvin.
We excuse me. We had it quite open to start with before we realized what was going on, but this was many years ago. So even the students had access. We had to shut that down very quickly once you see what they call their drives. And admins can't delete drives, or we didn't want to without their permission. So we had to call them in and get them to do that. We had a discussion about structuring things. So currently only a select number of people can create shared drives. I wanted to link all the structure to existing groups so that you'd have Google Groups and Google Drives, and then you could easily match up permissions without having to do too much in terms of who you add, that was decided against. So although the structure vaguely represents groups within the school, so for example, the departments all have their own shared drives, not everything is one-to-one with existing groups and shared drive. Some of the management of that to people we assign as I forget what the word is, owner or manager, the top level. So we would make the head of the school the manager of certain drives and say, if you can't explain B, then you can manage it yourself, and we'll leave that up to you. So we're kind of in that compromise.
Yeah, I think that's very sensible. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, just adding on really a bit of the discussion we had yesterday. I mean, I've got this disparaging phrase I use of a culture where we're locked in. I call it email and document land, where the total way of communication seems to be by email. So, for example, if they have a staff meeting, you'll have an agenda that's emailed out. You'll have a set of minutes that are emailed out. And when you look at how many part-time staff we've got all over in your small school, that'll hit about 60, 70 people, all who've got an email, who've got to do something with it. And what I've been trying to get in the mindset discussion with the leadership team is, well, if you structured your team drives a lot better, or you use Google Classroom, which we use with the governors for sharing and disseminating that information, then it does all the work for you. So if you create a calendar invite, you don't need to keep emailing people saying, remember the staff meetings tomorrow. You just create it on there, and you can put your agenda and your minutes on there. And if you structure them into a team drive, then if somebody misses it, if they're off for a week or it's not their timetable week, they can go to a team drive and find the minutes of the staff meeting, rather than having to wade through a bloody great long list of emails when they get back in. And I'm really trying to champion this. Let's slow the emails down. We seem to have, since COVID, and talking to colleagues at other schools and other general workplaces, we seem to have lost that ability to go and pick up the phone or walk down a corridor and it's, we'll send an email. And we've seemed to have regressed in some ways in what I call the email and document land behaviour. I don't know whether anybody else has experienced that within their organisations as a negative culture. I see it, of aggression.
Yeah, very much so. We are. I feel as I've said this 3 or 4 times now. We're about to implement a policy whereby we are automatically deleting emails older than 6 months old.
Yeah.
Because of subject access requests, all our agenda items and minutes go on the calendars themselves. So within your calendar event, you can have the documents within that. So that's where they go, so people know where to go to find them. It's, we are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we're improving. And I think, I completely agree with you, Andy, that lockdown meant that people changed their behaviours, and that's why we're having to impose this deletion of emails, because the things that people used to say to colleagues in the staff room or in the, hopefully not in the corridor, but in the privacy of an office where people can be a little bit more open and blunt, now they're putting them in emails. That's causing some real embarrassment when you get subject access requests in. So it's something that we're trying to actively improve as well. The other thing I would say in terms of shared drives, and that's my point, it changed so much. It was released, I think, prematurely. It wasn't really fit for purpose when they first released shared drives, team drive, shared drives, whichever one it was the first time round. They've changed the name and changed it back again, haven't they? And functionality has been dripping into it over years. The concept behind it is great, but the difficulty comes when you're training your staff in a certain way because there are limitations within shared drives, and then those limitations change. So therefore it comes with inherent difficulties because of that, I find.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I like, we set up a governor's classroom quite a number of years ago for the governors to meet, during lockdown. And rather than trying to train them all, we just said, well, you just go to classroom, and we structured in there so we had them all as teachers, so they can use and they quite like using the chat facility within there, and within the topics that you can put in classroom. And the use of like material they don't really have assignments, but posting it as material or actually posting it as an announcement. You can structure in topics like minutes, like agendas under, per academic year. And that works really well because it's like a one place to go to find all your stuff that you can drop in at any time and have a look round. And it's very similar in terms of way of how it structures it, and you can see it in your team drive, that structure. It automatically structures it in. So I'm sort of on the fence about whether we have one called staff room and trial that rather than having a team drive, where you have all your policies and minutes and all these sorts of regulatory compliance, regular meetings and things in. It seems to work well with me, and I'm a big fan of classroomers using them for a sort of communications tool. I don't know whether any other people use classroom like that for groups.
There was a couple of thoughts that occurred to me during this conversation. Do you remember in the olden days when there was a document that your employer required you to read, it'd be printed and sent round with a sheet at the front with all your names on it. You had to tick to say you'd read it.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether there's not a scope for a series of checkboxes at the top of documents that staff have to have read, like the minutes to meetings and things. And because you can assign a tick box to each individual member of staff, and they would say, yeah, I have read it. So you could actually track it that way. That was the first thing. And then in response to your second question, we're a big fan of chat here. We use chat spaces a lot.
Right.
And that helps to remove things that would ordinarily have gone into the inbox, because the inbox is already busy enough.
Yes.
And gives us another form of communication. And particularly now, you've also got the option to add tasks in there and documents in there, and it sorts out all the sharing permissions automatically and things. So we use it a great deal, both internally and externally with other customers, in support of their work. And we sit inside there, because you can have external people inside the chat group, and they can be in there and we can be in there and supporting them. So we use it a lot. So I think chat is definitely worth a thing. And it's interesting you said that in the Google Classroom, one of the things your governors liked was that chat stream, that first tab, because I think that makes a big difference. That it's about horses for courses, isn't it? If it's there are times when you need that formal audit trail, if you like, for want of a better word, inside email. But there are times when you just need to say, Chris, have you got the name of that so-and-so from such a place? Because it's gone out of my head because I'm having a senior moment. And then the reply comes back. And it's about thinking about how you shift that. But it requires training. Whatever tools you choose, you've got to be thinking about, well, how do I change that attitude to this? Where do they think to look for that information? Do they always still go to the email, or are they thinking, actually, no, well, that will be in the chat group?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with what Dave was saying there, that if you start to look at, the SARS and GDPR and restrict that email to 6 months, I mean, some people absolutely, crap their pants when you mention that to them, because their whole life revolves around, oh, it's in my email, I'll look back 8 years and find it. And I think culturally, across all sorts of workplaces, there's a inordinate reliance on individual emails as their filing system and everything else. And it's I explain it to people a bit like the analogy with the postman. The postman brings you letters now and again, not so many nowadays, but you don't keep them all in a pile in the envelope by the front door. You either bin them, read them, do them, file them, but you don't have 10 years worth of letters in their envelopes piled up in entrance hall. And the same applies to your work emails. You keep that pile to 3 or 4 on a tabletop, and you get rid of everything else. And I think with the focus on GDPR and SARS and managing your workflows, I think we're forced into looking at other issues like, can we use the spaces more? For me, I sometimes get confused on long spaces about trying to find something and going back through the topics. I know you can segment the threads, but it's still quite hard. Whereas Classroom naturally allows you to do that with the class, going into the classwork and then having a look at all the topics. So for me, it's either that or shared drives, really. And I'm on the fence.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts about this? I mean, it's kind of the discussions are as much about where does the data sit and where do people access it, isn't it? That's what we're thinking about, and what's the most efficient way to do that, and the one that suits your organization best. It will be different for us all, won't it?
Yeah. For me, it's about trying to leverage it away from the reliance on email, give something as a viable alternative that people like. And I guess a file structure in a shared drive is more traditional, because maybe that's what people are used to. And things like spaces or Classroom are really a bit more forward looking, or a bit more using some of the integration tools you can have in Workspace, and maybe a bit more, I don't know, just different.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart, you wanted to say something? Sorry to cut across, Andy.
Yeah, I was just thinking, So I work from home remotely for the school, and so do a couple of other colleagues. So we actually use Microsoft Teams for a lot of our chat. So it takes away lots of little emails, things that are not don't require being formal enough for an email. We move to that kind of chat, and then we've got the calling in there as well. So when you're saying go down the corridor, I virtually go down the corridor and call people for a chat rather than start typing things out quite often. So that's the best I can do at the moment. But yeah, moving away from email, I made a note of your 6 months there. I think that would be quite fascinating just to see people's reactions at our place if we do that. Even if we say only 6 years, we'll only keep 6 years. They would probably still be a bit scared.
You can set it up. I've got it set up so that you can exclude the deletion from emails that have been labelled with a certain label. So that's our approach. That if you label it as archive, it doesn't get deleted. So if you know that an email is important, all you have to do is label it, 2 clicks, and you know it's not going to have that rule applied. So things like finance departments, safeguarding teams, so on and so forth, that need to keep things for legit reasons, then they can exclude themselves from it. But 98% of the emails that go around are looked at once and they're ignored. And I consider myself one of the guilty ones of that. I'm looking across to one of my mailboxes here with 47,000 emails in there. But I'm like Andy said, I like to be able to go back and say, actually, no, I know that I'm right, and here you go. I can prove it from this email that I sent you in 2011. So I have to get over that myself. But,
yeah, it's a real mindset, cultural thing, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it's become the book down the back of your pants, hasn't it? In cultures, I think. Yeah, well, I sent you an email. And they're the behaviours I don't like. I prefer the one like you said, Stuart, of we'll have a chat in the corridor, pick up the phone or meet somebody for a coffee. I think culturally we have to embrace those old behaviours that had real value in terms of communication and involvement with an organisation, and not this book down the back of the pants. I know we live in a world of people in black suits and litigation, but somehow we've got to counter it, I feel. It's a passion of mine.
I think, Stuart, I'm thinking about your examples, Jay. If you've got, just keeping just 6 years, if you've got a subject access request, just think about how long a person in an office would spend redacting that material before you could legitimately and legally share it with the other person, because there'll be stuff in those 6 years of emails that you shouldn't share, subject to what the access request is.
Yeah.
So it could, if you don't get any requests, then you think, well, we've escaped. That's fine. So you don't think about it. But I bet if you just got one that's got a long history in an inbox, you think, and it could just be multiple inboxes that you've got to go through and check every single one. I think it could be a massive job, couldn't it? So I think there's food for thought there. James, you want to say something?
Yeah, just on email retention and things like that. Google HQ, their retention policy is 18 months. And the reason they've set it 18 months is because of the number of freedom of information requests that they used to get. And it was just taking them too long. So they decided that they would keep it for a maximum of 18 months and then purge it.
Yeah, I think there needs to be something more sensible than multiple years. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Andy? Yeah,
I've had discussions with our head, and he's of the view of a year, because it's sort of an annual cycle. And he was saying, sometimes he looks back through his emails at, what did I do at this time last year about the new families event? What did I say and who did I circulate it to? So I can see that. But I think as a school, we could get quite quickly to a year very easily by having some of those simple conversations with people. And like Dave set up, I chatted with him before about the archive thing. It requires people to do something positive to move it into archive as a known action, rather than a passive, well, it's just in my email somewhere. So it's a, you know, if you need to do something with it, you have to do something. You can't just be passive. And then encourage that. You know, like Stuart says about the walking down the corridor, picking up the phone, that type of behaviour.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Stuart?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on the data subject access request point. I think as a organization, I think some people do not know how tricky we could find certain requests. And I think we're kind of, yeah, we're going to get a shock one day, I think, when someone who knows what the result should be and doesn't get them back. I think sometimes we might only be saved because people don't know what the result should be. But yeah, that's definitely something that's what would you area where we are not perfect yet. We need to work on that.
Yeah, I think that I suspect there are lots of people out there like that. I think. We covered. I'm just looking back at the Q&A list. We covered Lisa's pronouns. It wasn't on our domain yesterday, but it might actually be there by now. And then Dave's asked about, has anyone taken the professional Chrome OS admin exam? People are aware of this. It's a new admin exam specifically about managing Chrome OS devices, and the link's in the chat if people want it. It's the exam, if it's going to follow the same pattern as the other admin sort of courses that you get on Coursera, the actual SAT exam might well be as much as $200, but currently it's free. So if you're looking to get some kind of Google certification, then now's the time to do it. I think it's free until, I'm going to say 2024, I think. It might be on the website.
January 24.
January 24.
But be careful, because what's the words I'm looking for here? It's crap. It's full of spelling mistakes, of ambiguous statements and questions, of it crashes quite frequently as well. And there is, despite it being in beta now, you know, we all work in IT and we understand what the purpose of beta is, don't we? For testing, so that we can find out errors and act upon them. You have got zero method of feeding back any of your concerns to Google or to Criterion, which is the platform that it runs on. And when you do try and do so, you're just shouting into a black hole and you get no response to any emails that you send. So have a look at it whilst it's free, by all means. If you do need to retake it, which I did, you know, there's two parts. There's a multiple choice and a lab one. I did the multiple choice and passed that, and then the lab experience crashed, and it took them 3 months to reissue me with a link for it. And then I failed the lab one a week or so ago. You don't get any kind of indication as to any feedback, because, you know, we work in education. Why would feedback be a valuable thing for somebody looking to improve? So you just get an email saying failed. You've got to wait 7 days. So I've just done it again today, and it crashed again, and the questions were ambiguous again. And as you may notice, I'm a little bit frustrated with it. But I do think that if they were to be able to iron it out, it would be a valuable thing, because there is still a lab element to it, unlike Google Educator, which they might as well give away free with cornflakes now, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's be aware of it, but just be aware of its limitations. Is what I would say. And I've just dropped in the chat as well a link to my planning document for email auto deletion, which is, I've looked at it. I've not really done a great deal with it for about 12 months now, so I should probably act on that. But I've made it publicly accessible, so please grab a copy if you think that it's going to be of any value to you. If not, then don't. But I will be making it private again after this meeting. So if anybody can use it within this call, please do so. After that, it's going back on my to-do list. But yeah, enjoy the experience of the professional Chrome OS certificate. Yeah, 125 quid, $125 normally. So if you're going to do it, if you have that sadistic, that masochistic appeal, then do it before January.
Yeah, the questions in the educator exams, when it was a proper exam, when you had proper tasks to do, some of the language in that was just, they would never get a plain English award, would they? Google. It's just obtuse and kind of those strange, daft, long sentences that kind of hint at a double negative, but when you read it twice through, it's actually not. It's just kind of the way they've structured it. And think, oh, it's just, and it is, the exams. Yeah, they're almost too easy now, aren't they? But the language is better. But clearly, they've gone back to the same question writer, which is the real shame.
But that's the thing, isn't it? They took away the lab from Google Educator, excuse me, so that they could offer it to people in different languages, because they didn't have the resources to translate the lab experience.
Yeah.
So they devalued the entire qualification to reach out to more people, and yet they're pushing this drivel out with terrible grammar and terrible ambiguous statements on there.
Andy, you want to ask a question?
I was just going to ask Dave what coffee he drinks nowadays, because he's absolutely on fire this morning.
I also want to ask a question to Dave. I can't believe that he's on commission for selling it and he's still acting in this way. You know, it's just thanks for everybody signing up off the back of Dave's recommendation there. But it's like anything. It'll be US language, spelt wrong, pushed out quickly, and they will iterate it. Definitely for when people are charged, but it's a shame that the test bed is so disappointing for those people who are going through the testing phase. And I've made a note of that. I won't attribute to you, Dave, but I've just mentioned that to Ollie and just said, like Joe, customers, I've just said customers are feeding back that this free thing is spelt wrong, and also they feel it's actually not really appropriate, might be worth a review. When it comes time for people paying, because I'm not sure how many paid people you'd get for it. So any feedback that is really useful.
And that's the thing that's frustrating me more than anything else. They don't give you that opportunity to feedback. It's a beta product, so therefore, they should be craving feedback from the people who are taking it. And yet, I've tried to feedback to both Criterion and to Google, including Ollie, to be honest, because Ollie's a member of another group, another Google Spaces group that I'm part of with some other Google admins, and I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of Google admins saying the same thing, and Ollie has seen those posts, but hasn't yet been able to comment from Google's perspective. And I understand the restrictions that Ollie's under there, so that's not a slight of Ollie. It's he's got to toe the company line.
We will nudge as we always do. If anybody's struggling with anything, or if anybody does have anything, and we do have at times have ear to the gods, and we'll put it forward. That's all we can do, and let's see. Hopefully they respond. They're normally pretty good, and it's a shame that they're not responding in some forums. But we will continue to push things forward, and we do appreciate the feedback. Definitely, because I won't be sitting it now, which is always a benefit. So,
well, there you go.
Did you sit it on a Mac, a PC, or a Chromebook?
I've sat it on a Chromebook the first time, and then on a PC the second. Well, the first time I did it when I did the multiple choice, that was on a Chromebook, and it failed to load the lab on a Chromebook. So I jumped onto a PC, because you can request an email link to send you the lab again. Jumped onto a PC, and it just sat there saying provisioning your account and didn't do anything. And then 3 months later, I got an email saying it's been cancelled, despite emailing them weekly to ask what's going on with it. And the most response I got was it's being looked into.
It does strange things now, doesn't it? Because is this Quick Labs? Is that what?
Sorry, say again, Paul.
Does the test come through Quick Labs?
No, it's Criterion. It's the old Criterion.
Oh, right, okay. Because there was that thing, wasn't there, with Quick Labs stuff that because you've now got to add additional accounts. It kind of does. It always gets a bit glitchy if you try and do some of their Quick Lab courses.
No, it's Criterion. You've got to run it in incognito. Like I say, it's got potential to be worthwhile. The other thing, and I can't disclose what's on there, obviously, because you're under NDA when you do it. But when I have resat it, I got exactly the same exam questions as I did the first time round. So that may be of relevance to anybody who decides that they need to have a go at it twice.
Excellent, very, very helpful. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's on my list, and I have started looking at some of the content. I'm feeling a little bit some of the content that it's yes, you need to know. I'm thinking it's not quite in my area. I'm a teacher first and a technician second, really. So
you don't need to be technical at all, Paul. To be honest, it's not a difficult exam if you can use a search facility within the Google admin panel, which, let's face it, we all have to do because it's not particularly well laid out. Then you should be able to find everything that you need to.
Oh, right, okay. Well, it's on my list. Steve has.
Give it a go. It's free.
Yeah.
Use my referral code. It's I heart Google DL, yeah, you know, you'll get an extra 10% off your already generous pricing of $0.
Yeah.
And Dave also gets commission on top of that, and also gets to take the exam. So please make sure that you use that code, because every time you use it, Dave has to sit it again and go through the process. So if you don't get anything out, I just want to listen to Dave on these calls. Have to basically say, stop sending the code, stop sitting the exams, because they're still not amended the spelling. So no, sounds brilliant.
The good news is, if I fail it today, the good news is I don't have to do it for another 60 days. So happy days.
I'm only doing it to get off your to-do list.
I'm only doing it because I've signed my entire team up to do it, because you know, our trust is very close to the Yorkshire border, so we love something for nothing. So whilst this exam is free to access, then let's get everybody signed up to it. Is my
It does
approach.
sound a bit like it's not worth it at the moment, doesn't it? You know, I mean, it's a bit too expensive.
It's you may say that, Paul. I couldn't possibly comment any further than I already have done.
Yeah.
I mean, we are recording this again, aren't we? I've done it again.
Yeah, and there's everybody from Yorkshire. I'm not sure who is from Yorkshire. I know Andy is living in Yorkshire. Thanks for that, Dave. We do like anything for free, as I take a sip out of my puddle water, because I don't want to pay for council pop, as we call it. So yeah, as a Yorkshireman, I definitely adhere to that. While it's free, I might say it numerous times, even though it's rubbish.
Absolutely,
apparently.
you like out for an out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Why not?
Excellent. Good. Any other questions about any other areas that we want to have covered while we've got this wealth of wisdom in front of us?
No, that just thanks again, Dave, for that document on the Gmail retention. That's really useful.
What? Just as a point, it's just a thought. Don't know whether it's even possible. I've not discussed it with the team or anything else. We've just been talking about chat and spaces, and I don't want to make sure that your chat and spaces on your Google domain becomes a toilet roll of information that you have to unravel it to get to the bottom. But would it be beneficial, and I think these sessions are brilliant, and Paul's done a great job of leading it again, and thanks for everybody's attendance, that outside of these calls, we used to have the virtual staff room, but is it beneficial that we created a chat space for people? And obviously we'd send an email out and ask if you want to be part of it, where the C-Learning team and yourselves can ask those questions and prompt each other, and Dave can potentially share things like that, and other people can. I think sharing and connecting others outside of these calls are so important, and it's a strength of C-Learning. A thumbs up from quite a few people. Andy, a question, that's fine. It's just a thought whether that would be beneficial for you.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. I mean, one of the things I was going to suggest, which one of our other providers of our MIS do, which is quite good, is we're a bit like Rick does with the ANME as well, is to have sort of some regional user groups together where we can meet up and discuss things, whether that's online or in reality.
Yeah,
you know, with all your client base of schools, really, just to share some best practice or things that people are taking some, you know, ideas from and moving ahead on very areas to like showcase what can be done, what they're doing, and sharing that best practice. Because I think Paul said it earlier on, a lot of this is horses for courses, and it's picking what's right and appropriate for your school, your organisation. But sometimes it's really nice to get some great ideas from people who are champion and leading areas of things.
100%. I've just made an action to see, and we'll put it out to the community and see if any schools are open in certain regions to hosting. It wouldn't be massive, and start to think about that as a structure and a support mechanism for face-to-face stuff, but definitely the chat groups as well to support that. And yeah, we'll do anything we can to support the community. Just on that, we will be attending some ANME events this year, and I don't know if everybody's seen, but Google are partnering with ANME as headline sponsor and everything else. So it's a great community to be part of. If you're not a member of it, I think Rick and anybody that's in it already do a great job to connect and support the community. And we have been partnering through the portal for over 12 months now, but I think the intention is to start to attend some face-to-face regional events. So yeah, we'll I think the points of contact often are individuals such as yourself, so it's always beneficial to be in those networks and those forums.
And if you do want to do something live in person in anywhere in the north, then I'm happy to host, and I will provide Andy with some of the coffee that I've been drinking this morning.
What I will do is I'll create a couple of groups, one for the end users and one for the admin groups, and we'll put them in the email that Chris sends out with the video and the slide deck this week. So and because we'll just do it by link. So rather than you get an email inviting you, you'll get a link, because you can now join a chat group by link. So the link will be there, and we'll put it in the bottom of the emails that Chris sends out very kindly every month rather. Maybe every 2 or 3 months, just to remind people that they're there. So if people want to join, they can. If they don't, so there's no pressure to join. Then we'll do it that way.
Just be careful with the link, because we'll end up with chat bombing like we had meat bombing.
We'll consider all different avenues, and if people share on the link and everything else, we just have to be mindful, because we want to be able to accept people in and make sure that it's a safe space for the community to just share and put stuff in. And for example, Dave, if you were to then go in, we'd not seen it or we'd missed something through the link, and you'd shared a document that somebody might have access to, a document that you'd innocently shared for 30 minutes or something. So we'll make sure that that's vetted and checked for everybody's safety, and make sure it's a positive space for all. Yeah, look forward to that. I'll definitely be, Paul will add me to that group. I won't help from a technical point of view, but it'd be nice to see and oversee the stories in the community building and helping each other out. I think is always the best place.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Lovely. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll turn the recording off and say thank you very much for coming.